Staff spirits are coming in, and also we will see a lot of those things in the evening as well during the awards. But without further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Sanjeet Randhawa, Managing Director of Bacardi India and Southeast Asia. So he's been with the company for almost about 20-21 years in a lot of different roles now. And we are really looking forward to this keynote address, sir. So it'll be very interesting to see. Following his speech, we will obviously have mics which will be running around. So there'll be a short Q&A session as well for 10 minutes. So if anybody has any questions, then do feel free to just raise your hand and fire out. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Desai. Thank you, Ambrosia, for having me here. You talk of transformation, and I've had the privilege of being in this industry for now, I think on the 1st of January, it will be 31 years. And it's been, I think, it has seen some transformation. And I've also had the privilege of working with some veterans, and some of them who are here today. Mr. Roy, thank you very much. As I was telling some of my colleagues, I learned my craft with veterans such as Mr. Roy. And I've had the privilege of working with other veterans like Mr. Suresh Menon, who's here as well, and Mr. Anant Iyer, if he's still around somewhere. But, it's been a remarkable journey. And that, on that journey, I've seen some transformation. But I believe, actually, that the next 5 years will see far greater transformation in this industry than we've seen in the last 30 years. And I think the industry is in a good position to move on that journey of transformation. And possibly the last 18 months have taught us a lot. And let me start by talking a bit about COVID, if you permit me. As we stand here today, 18 months down the line from COVID, I think this industry is coming out stronger. Well, COVID is probably here to stay. And the post-COVID reality is definitely here to stay. We have to deal with it. And I think I'm not just speaking on my behalf or on behalf of Bacardi, but I think the entire industry is dealing with it quite well. We believe that the pandemic has taught us a few things. And the first, I would say, is that it's taught us to be a bit more efficient with our resources. As there were pressures on our bottom lines, we've all had to tighten our belts a bit, but we also had to be ready for the consumer and for a change in the landscape of the industry today. We are experiencing now, post the second lockdown, probably the highest growths that the industry has seen. High double-digit growths. And that's all the more reason for us to make sure that this growth going forward is sustainable. I mean, the growth at the cost of your cash, and that's something that I learned, from Dr. Khaitan, while I worked with him for 2 years at Rampur Distillery, is the importance of focusing on cash. And I think the last 18 months has also brought that importance to the forefront. So we have to keep on this journey on efficiency. We can't let go. We've learned something. Let's take those learnings and move forward. That will be one of the engines that will drive transformation, efficiencies. And for long, the liquor industry has been thought of as a place, इनके पास बहुत पैसा है, खर्च करते हैं, किसी को परवाह नहीं है कि bottom line में क्या हो रहा है, but that's the difference that we have to make now. And I believe that as an industry, we need to work with the regulators in this post-COVID reality for getting that support that the industry needs, not just us as manufacturers or brand owners, but also for the channels that we operate in. And that is something that we as an industry have to work together. The consumer is changing. And we've seen that the consumer has been on this premiumization path even prior to the COVID. And we have to be with the consumer on that path. The consumer today is more knowledgeable, definitely much more knowledgeable than when we started out in the industry. And he's very vocal about his choices. The consumer is telling us, and this is from insights that we gather speaking to the consumers, the consumer is saying, I'll drink less, but I'll drink better. And it's very encouraging to see not just the multinational companies, but the Indian companies focusing on premiumization. But that's where the consumer is. It's not about serving the consumer where he is today, but being ready to serve that consumer where you expect him to be 2 years down the line, and have products and experiences and offerings that can deliver to what he wants. The consumer is not just looking for a product. He's not looking to get drunk anymore. He's looking to gain some experiences. He's looking to enjoy that experience of consuming those products that we offer. So I think what is important for all of us is in every decision that we take to ensure that we have the consumer at the heart of those decisions. We have the consumer in our minds, in our hearts when we take those decisions. And that has to be defined. The consumer has to be the one that defines our strategies. And the consumer should also be at the heart of our regulators' decisions when they define policies. And we need to convince them to keep the consumer in the mind and when they're deciding on policies. The channels are changing. We're seeing remarkable changes in the channels of our business. You know, somebody said it's a new normal. I would say it's a new extraordinary. Are we moving from the new normal to the new extraordinary? Home consumption. I mean, who would have thought how important that occasion is going to be? Marketeers are focusing their energies on meeting the consumer at the home occasion and taking that experience that he would have otherwise got at the on-premise to their home. Are we ready to be there in the home of the consumer? Not just with the bottle there, but educating them, engaging with them, providing those experiences. So that home occasion has emerged as a huge critical occasion. You know, some of us refer to that as the non-channel. Traditionally, you've had the off and the on. So this is the non. This is going beyond the traditional off and on. To be in a position to serve that consumer at that home occasion, it's important for us to now start engaging with the regulators on the delivery mechanism to reach that consumer at home. So home delivery, the e-commerce. I mean, e-commerce has to come. And it has to come sooner rather than later. There are steps to be taken in small steps, which are forced to be taken by the regulators during the pandemics as they kept consumers off the shops and off the streets. Home delivery started in a few states, but it's been rolled back in some states. I think the only 2 states that allow home delivery today is Odisha and West Bengal. West Bengal did also give a letter of intent to Amazon to set up e-commerce, but we don't know what's happening there. And I think it's important for us as an industry to engage with the regulators and frame the governance framework that will allow the regulators to take that bold step on e-commerce. I mean, if today the consumer can order pretty much anything home and in whatever quantities and whatever limits, why should it not be for alcohol? I mean, we must also recognize that the consumer today is far more responsible than what he was or she was 5 years ago. The retail, I mean, one has to just travel to Gurgaon to see the emergence of the new retails in Gurgaon. And we hope to see that soon in Delhi. It's a metamorphosis the way the retail has changed, the retail landscape has changed. Are we ready to partner with those retails in offering the consumer the best experience he has? I mean, I remember starting out 30 years ago when the retail was a cage shop and you stuck your hand in and said, वो 200 रुपए वाला दे दो या 300 रुपए वाला दे दो. There was no brand recall, there was nothing. There was no hope in hell that you were allowed to pick up a bottle and read the label or talk or ask something about the product. I mean, today in a city like Gurgaon, the kind of retail shops would challenge the best duty-free shops at the airports. And that's happening. Why? Because the user is expecting that. The shopper is expecting that. And as brand owners, as manufacturers, we have to be ready to be on that journey with the consumer. And one of the challenges we are having is the number of retail outlets has been stagnant for the last 20 years. What's it? 70, 80,000 retail outlets in the country for the Alcobev industry. FMCG has 10 million. That's the difference. When will we get there? How soon can we get there? Is something that I think we need to look at that. And I do believe there should be a direct correlation between the number of outlets and the size of the industry. If the government expects the industry to grow and generate the revenues, then please allow for the channels to open up, multiply. Have the mechanism of governance that you need, but allow the growth of the retail. You know, all these previously existing channels have seriously upped their game. And the consumer expectation in these channels is not what it was before. It simply is not what it was before. We need to create the user journey and the experience that will not just surprise the consumer, but will delight him. You know, we don't use the word delight as often as we should on our brands, on our experiences. And I think that's what the consumer wants. And he also wants the convenience. He doesn't want to travel 10 kilometers to go and buy his liquor. He wants to be able to go to a shop where he can park his car properly, he's received properly, he's given a trolley, go and touch and read the labels and buy his product. I think that's the change that will transform the industry. It's starting. It's already beginning. The other thing I want to talk about on this transformation journey is the importance of innovation. You're seeing the emergence of premium Indian craft. It's starting with gin and some remarkable products coming out. And I say that with all pride. I know they are our competitors, but I say that with all pride. It's great to see premium Indian craft gins coming out in India. Gins that can match any of the global premium products. And I think more will come soon. I think the next category that will see premium craft gin is going to be rum. And rum is going to be the next big one. Are we prepared to drink some rum? Let me make a pitch for Bacardi here right now. We have a bar open in the evening today. Try some of our premium rums. But you know, until a few years ago, there was no brand that we could say it has the strong provenance of India, apart from Old Monk, which was one product that we had. We all started our journeys drinking Old Monk. But today you're seeing some great gins having their whole India story there. There are a couple of rums coming up with the India story. And I think that's going to be the next big pitch. We started to see malts coming out a few years ago, led by the likes of Rampur and Amrit. Fantastic work happening there with those malts. And just 2 days ago, I WhatsApped a picture somebody sent me from Houston, Texas to Amar Sinha. And it was so great to see the products on a shelf in Houston, Texas. And that's where our Indian products are reaching. And that's amazing that it can happen. That's the transformation we are seeing. The other one thing that will happen is you'll begin to see new to world categories. Way back in 2002, Bacardi was the first one to bring in the RTDs as a new-to-world, ready-to-drink category. And I think Mr. Roy was one of the architects. We had to go lobbying state by state to get the rules framed for that category. That was a transformation moment. We will see more of these coming and probably see them rapidly coming. Not just RTDs, cocktails in a bottle, the convenience. I want to drink a great tasting cocktail at home. I don't know how to make it. I don't want to be a mixologist or a bartender and be trained to make it. I want the convenience of making it at home. So packaged cocktails, ready to serve, you will see that happening. We believe RTDs will expand beyond just breezer. You will see more categories. You will see premiumization of the RTD categories happening soon, as you're seeing it happen in beer. And the next one, which you're beginning to see globally happening, is what is called as no low. No alcohol, low alcohol, 0.0. I mean, that's as far as the industry going into adjacent spaces and taking the brand experiences to no and low alcohol spaces. That's the next transformation as well that you will see. But there are still some challenges in India. Huge amount of challenges in bringing global innovations to India. Challenges that I hope we can address with the regulators. Many states still don't allow mid-proof. The products over between 8% and 40% can't get it. Many states don't allow it. And if the consumer is wanting something at a mid-proof, why can't I serve him that? I mean, that's just one example of some global innovations that are difficult to bring to India. Sustainability. All of us would like to invest in bringing sustainable packaging, environment-friendly processes, but these come at a cost. Am I able to transfer that cost to the consumer who might be willing to pay for it? No. There are restrictions that the government imposes on me. Because that cost today is higher than my probably a non-sustainable packaging. But I'm unable to transfer that cost because of restrictive pricing practices that the government has. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation here. I mean, allow me to bring sustainable products. We want to invest in that. But let the regulator come along us with this journey. But more than ever before, I do believe that innovation is what will be the key differentiator. And innovation beyond the traditional categories that we are used to seeing. It has to go beyond whiskey, rum, gin, vodka. It has to be in different spaces, as I said. Ready to serve, ready to drink, ready packaged cocktails, low, no low alcohol. These are the spaces that we as an industry have to start experimenting with and venturing out in. And the more we see more industry members coming on this journey, it will be faster for all of us, rather than just one or two members investing in this. Next, I want to touch upon ease of doing business. Because unless there is an ease of doing business, that's not going to happen, Trilok. Transformation to the future is not going to happen. We are the only industry that has not yet been liberalized. The liberalization journey in India started in 1991. Today we are in 2021, at the end of 2021. This industry has not yet been liberalized fully. We are still caught up in the shackles of the colonial era. Excise acts still date back to pre-independence with modifications over the years. We are still referred to as a sin industry. And that's crazy. Despite what we have seen, how the alcohol revenues have supported the state governments in the last 18 months to bring back some sanity in their own businesses, we are still referred to as a sin industry. And I believe that is changing slowly. I do like to believe that that is changing slowly. They are more receptive to inviting us at the table when they are talking about policies. And I think it will change. It is changing already. But there is still some need for liberalization. And I'm not saying the governments of the day should walk away from governance. No, strengthen the governance. But there is still a middle path, a balanced path to take to liberalize some of the aspects of our excise policies. There is a huge need for consistency, for uniformity, and simplicity in the excise laws. I mean, we have to invest in a couple of managers in the company just to keep track of the changes in the excise policies and prepare our cost cards and our value chain pricing with the changing what can be passed on and what cannot be passed on and how many types of fees and taxes there are. I remember some years ago when I was the CFO for Bacardi and we had some visitors from our global headquarters and I put up a slide on the taxation on liquor industry in India, on all kinds of taxation. It filled up that slide. I think there were something like 35 different elements of taxes in those days. I mean, this was a long time back before GST, but so there were things like octroi and municipal taxes, and they were all import fee and export fee. I mean, it's crazy that after 70 years of independence, if I have to move alcohol from one state to another state, it is still called export and import. It's as basic as that. You know, so while we have to ease up the interstate movement with the requisite enforcement procedures, have the governance around it, trust the manufacturers and brand owners to be responsible, have policies that are predictable. At the end of the year, I don't know what the policy is going to be for next excise year in most states. And there is a rush and a clamor to get organized starting from January, February, as state governments start announcing policies on what my labels requirements would be, am I allowed, not allowed, what my pricing is going to be, what new laws are going to come. Printing of the labels has to take place. Just in this flux of changing from one excise to another excise year, I don't know how much money we lose every year in simply writing off labels. So can we not have predictability of our policies? 2 years to 5 years, something of that sort. I remember working in Singapore, and after about 15 years, the Singapore government revised the excise duty on alcohol. And the entire industry went into a tailspin about how to manage the pricing changes. And there was me in Singapore, and there was another gentleman, ex-Pernod India, who was also in Singapore, and we were both laughing. I'm like, ये तो हम हर साल करते हैं. This we do every year. Why are you guys so worried about what's going to happen? Just make the changes and move on. But that's not the way it should be. We need greater predictability in our policies. This is one industry which the word economies of scale is alien. Economies of scale in our production and our manufacturing is completely alien. I cannot set up large factories. We have to set up multiple factories in multiple states just to navigate those taxation structures that we have of import, export, freight, transportation, the cross-border restrictions. I need GPS locks. I need track and trace. I need QR codes. I need all kinds of things that are there. These are roadblocks. They're well-intentioned, but if you think carefully about these, how did we get here? Because over the years, we've tied ourselves into knots in terms of the pricing and the need to stop cross-border transactions of alcohol. And each generation after generation, we've got even more crazier trying to control that. Which is why I say, why are we still stuck in the colonial era? Why are we still stuck at 42.8% alcohol? Why can't it be 40%? Why can't it be 35%? Why can't it be 37.5%? I mean, I've been debating this. Just a 2.8% saving in the alcohol content that goes into all of our IMFL is 2.8% of alcohol content that the government can divert to ethanol blending. And it is a 2.8% or whatever cost of our ENA saving into our bottom line. Let us have that flexibility to be able to do that. Why are we still stuck in that colonial era of 75% proof and some formula derived it to 42.8%? Why are we still stuck on just 750 ml, 375 ml, 180 ml? Some states have allowed 90 ml, but why can't it be 700 ml? Why can't it be 500 ml? Few states have allowed 500 ml. Why can't it be whatever pack size I want or the consumer wants? I mean, the debate is on in terms of import duties and taxation on basic custom duties. So I don't want to spend too much time there, but at least a large part of the industry would welcome that. It's high time that happened. You go around to neighboring countries, it's far less. So that's something that I think should be welcome. Because I do believe if global competition is good for the economy in every other industrial sector, why do we feel it will not be good for the Alcobev sector? Why? And I think that's something we must welcome. One of the biggest challenges I think is there for us to tackle or to sit with the regulators is when can we move to a market-driven pricing and not a controlled regime? Why should pricing, and I'm going to borrow words from my friend Mr. Suresh Menon, why should pricing be granted or approved and not taken? Let the consumer decide. Let the market decide where the pricing should ultimately fall and rest, as it does in every other industry. The government, I believe, should be focused on governance and enforcement, and not on pricing. I would go so far as saying, why should the government be even in business of alcohol? And I think what Delhi is doing is a good step. And I think time will come when more governments will see that. You can still increase your revenues, you can still focus on enforcement and governance, and not be in the business of selling alcohol. While I'm still on the question of ease of doing business, I think there's something that we internally need to be doing, of being transparent in the way we work, and also being, I think, mature enough to say that we are open to sharing data. One of the biggest problems in this industry today is we don't have competitive data. A few companies have started now to share data, and we are sharing data with Canadian and with IWSR now, but a lot of companies are reluctant. There are only a handful of companies who are sharing data with Canadian and IWSR. Not that I'm making a pitch for either one of them, please don't get me wrong. But I do believe having authentic data will go a long way in helping us, brands, manufacturers, frame our own strategies on where we are going, rather than being, having our own biases about what's really happening, or being misled by some of our people into what is really happening on the ground. So I can only underscore the importance to have reliable data on not just volumes and pricing, but even on consumer data. And having platforms where we can share that data in all transparency. So all of these things that I talked about on the ease of doing business, I believe forums like this are great places to start. And we must facilitate, I believe, and I love saying this, borrowing from politicians, a common minimum program that we as industry members can take back together to the regulators. And last, I want to dwell upon the topic of people. Our businesses are not capital intensive. So there are only two assets that we have, our brands and our people. And we need to really invest in our people, in our brands, and this, I believe, will help the transformation of our industry sooner rather than later. You know, traditionally, and we were talking in the lobby just now here, traditionally, I mean, it's been a very incestuous industry. People have been always in United Spirits or Shaw Wallace. Most of us started our journey in one of the other companies, and there were always some cross movements. And then later, other companies came. People moved from one to the other. But today, at least some of us have started looking outward. And I think it's a good thing that if we can bring in outside talent into the liquor industry and allow that talent to be the agents of change, to bring in new ideas, new processes, new thoughts to our industry as well. Bring the best practices to the liquor industry from the others. You know, diversity and inclusion has become a big part of our agenda, at least. And so when you will remember in Bacardi, when way back in 2001, there was one woman in the entire company. She was the secretary to Jayant Kapoor. Today I have 15% of my managerial workforce as women, and we have women in our leadership team. And I think that's important for industry to embrace diversity. This transformation has to be at all levels if it has to come through. There was a time when working in a liquor industry was taboo. I think it's no longer so. More and more women are coming through to join the liquor industry. And what better example I can give than a few of the ladies sitting here in this room. Nita now is the CEO of ISWAI. Anmol is the head of customer marketing for Bacardi. Our CFO is a woman. Our marketing director is a woman. And the managing director and the CEO of Diageo is a lady. And that's fantastic, because we're setting great examples. Because I believe the industry workforce, our people, must be reflective of the consumers we serve. Do we have the similar mix of our people so they're reflecting what the consumer is? I mean, I don't know anything about the consumer who drinks breezer. I have to rely on 24-year-olds who work for our company and get their thoughts on it. And I'm glad I have them on my workforce. Because I can't relate to that. I'm too old. I'm a dinosaur. But it's important that as companies evolve, we must have a workforce that is reflective of the consumers we serve. Because that will help us understand the consumer, and that in turn will spur innovation, which again goes back to the transformation process. And I'd like to end by saying that, it's people who make the industry. We have a responsibility, all of us here and those who are listening. What will be our legacy for future generations in the alcobev industry? What will we leave behind? What will we be remembered by? Are we leaving this industry in a better place than what we inherited? And then that will be the true test of transformation. Thank you all.